All the way live, all the way live. What is up, my beautiful people? Can I ask you a question? How many jobs have you had in your lifetime? One, two, three, five? Maybe you've worked in retail. Maybe you worked for the government. Maybe you served in the military just like I did. If you did, thank you for your service. Maybe you worked at a hospital. Maybe you worked for Disney like I did. Maybe you climbed the corporate ladder. Now, here's my next question. Do you know exactly where every single retirement account from every one of those jobs is today? I'm talking about every 401k, every retirement plan, every dollar you worked very, very hard to earn. Do you know where it is? Because if your answer is, well, I think so, or I'm pretty sure, or I don't know, then today's conversation is for you. So here's why. Right now, today, there are 31.9 million forgotten retirement accounts in America holding more than 2.1 trillion in assets with an average balance of roughly $66,000. Those aren't made up numbers. So they highlight just how common it is for people to lose track of retirement savings when they change jobs. So think about that. 31.9 million. That means millions of people worked, saved. Y'all, yeah, my eyes open. Saved, moved on to another job, started raising kids, got divorced, happily divorced, moved across the country, started businesses, retired. And somewhere along the way, they forgot about money that belongs to them, money they work for, money that they earn, money that they sacrifice for. Now, let me make something clear. I'm not saying everyone watching has a 401k, but if you change jobs, it's worth checking. And here's the crazy part: the problem became so widespread that the U.S. Department of Labor created the Retirement Savings Lost and Found database to help people reconnect with retirement accounts. When I learned that, I said, wait a minute. Why aren't more people talking about this? Why isn't this all over the news? Why didn't anyone tell us this when we left our jobs? That's exactly what we're talking about today. Hello, 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 my beautiful people. Welcome back to Let's Talk About It Tuesday. So, if you are brand new to the channel, my name is SaVita. I am known as Olivia Pope Finance because I help people fix the money situations nobody ever explains. I'm also a Navy veteran, a woman who's had to rebuild, someone who's made mistakes, learned some very hard lessons, and decided I never wanted somebody else to learn those lessons the hard way if I could help it. So, around here, we believe financial education should be simple, not confusing, not intimidating, not wrapped in fancy words to make somebody sound smarter than they really are. So, my job is to help you understand how money works so your money can start working harder for you. So, before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you already haven't. Hmm. And if somebody popped up in your mind, the moment I started talking, that coworker, your sister, your mama, your brother, your best friend, share this video with them. Because this conversation could literally save somebody from leaving thousands of dollars behind. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. So, most of us grew up hearing the exact same advice: get a good job, work hard, contribute to your 401k, retire one day, live happily ever after. That was a plan. Now, nobody stopped us and say, hey, girl, hey, do you really understand how this thing works? Nobody explained what happens if you leave your job. Nobody explained your options. Nobody explained taxes. Nobody explained fees. Nobody explained beneficiaries. Nobody explained what happens if the company changes providers. Nobody explained what happens if you die. Nobody explained any of it. We were just told, sign here, check this box, pick a percentage, and keep it moving. Can we be honest for a second? How many of us actually read those enrollment packets? I know I didn't. I was trying to figure out health insurance, direct deposit, vacation time, where the bathroom was, who had the good snacks in the break room. And now you want me to become a retirement expert in 30 minutes. Come on now. That's not realistic. And here's what makes me sad. People blame themselves. They'll say, I should have known. I should have paid more attention. I should have asked more questions. Maybe. But somebody also should have explained it better, because financial literacy is not common sense. It's taught, or at least it's supposed to be. And if nobody teaches you, how are you supposed to know? That's one of the biggest reasons I do what I do. Not because I think people are bad with money, not because people are lazy, not because people do not care. People don't know what they don't know. And that is a huge difference. Now, here's what today's conversation, this is where it really gets interesting, because this isn't just about finding an old 401k. This is understanding what your retirement strategy actually looks like. Because let me ask you something. If I asked you today, oh child, how much money will you actually have available every month in retirement after taxes? Could you answer me? Most people can't. Not because they're not intelligent, because nobody ever walked them through it. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. By the end of this conversation, you are going to understand why people lose track of their retirement money. What happens after you leave a job, what mistakes to avoid, what questions you should be asking. And the very first step you can take today, if you think you may have an old retirement account somewhere with your name on it, because there's something I believe with my whole heart. Knowledge changes families. Knowledge changes futures. Knowledge changes generations. And when you know better, you really can do better. Now, let me tell you the story of how America went from pensions to 401ks, and why millions of people are sitting on retirement accounts they haven't even thought about in years. Let's talk about it. Now, before we can understand why millions of people have forgotten retirement accounts, we have to go back in time. Because retirement did not always look the way it looks today. Believe it or not, there was a time when many Americans retired with something called a pension. Now, if you're 45, you may have heard your grandparents talk about pensions. A pension was a retirement benefit that your employer promised to provide after you retired, assuming you met the plan's retirement requirements. So it was generally funded and managed by the employer. So employees still had to make career decisions and plan their finances, but many retired on pensions as a key source of retirement income. Then something changed. So companies began shifting toward defined contribution plans like a 401k. So instead of the company taking primary responsibility for funding a pension, employees became responsible for contributing to their own retirement accounts. Now hear me, I'm not saying 401ks are bad. They're not. For millions of people, they're an important way to save for retirement, especially when an employer offers matching contributions. So if your employer matches your contributions, that's part of your overall compensation. So don't leave money on the table without understanding what you're giving up. But here's the issue. Most people were handed the tool without being taught how to use it effectively. So that's the difference. So it's like somebody giving you a keys to a Ferrari without ever teaching you how to drive. The car isn't the problem. The lack of education is. Now let's talk about what happens when you leave a job, because this is where people get tripped up. You get another opportunity. Maybe it's a promotion. Maybe you're laid off. Maybe you start your own business. Maybe you move to another state. Maybe life just happens, because y'all know life be lifing. So your last day comes. You clean out your desk. You hug your coworkers. You turn in your badge. HR hands you a stack of paperwork thicker than a Sunday newspaper. You're thinking about your next paycheck, health insurance, your new commute, your kids, packing boxes, finding childcare. You are not sitting there saying, let me study my retirement options for the next 3 hours. You're trying to survive the transition. So what happens? You tell yourself, I'll deal with it later. And then later becomes next month, Next month becomes next year, then 5 years go by, then 10. And before you know it, you have worked three more jobs. You moved twice. You changed your phone number. You changed your email. Maybe you even changed your last name. And that old retirement account is still sitting there. It's waiting, it's growing, or being reduced by fees depending on the investments and plan costs. Either way, it is no longer on your radar. Can anybody relate to that? Type me in the comments if you've ever said, I get to it later, because let's be honest, we have all done it, not just with money, with the dentist, the gym, cleaning out that closet, calling Aunt Beck back. That's my aunt real name, y'all. Life gets busy and retirement feels like something that's decades away until one day it is not. Now, I want to bust one of the biggest myths I hear. People tell me, SaVita, I lost my old 401k. Most of the time, you didn't lose it, you lost track of it. So there's a difference. And that's good news, because some things that's lost forever may never come back. But something you simply lost track of, it can be found. So that's why resources like the Department of Labor's Retirement Savings Lost and Found exist to help reconnect people with retirement accounts they may have forgotten about, either changing jobs. Now, here's another question. How many of you know exactly who the beneficiary is on every retirement account you have? Think about it. So if something happens to you tomorrow, would the right person receive that money? Or is your ex-spouse still listed because you never updated the paperwork? I know nobody likes talking about this stuff, but this is grown folk business. This is legacy business. This is, I love my family enough to get my paperwork together business. And sometimes the greatest act of love is not buying someone something. It is making sure that they do not have to untangle a financial mess while they're grieving. So that's real. Now, let me share something that changed the way I think. So one day I realized that people spend years planning vacations, months spent planning weddings, weeks planning birthday parties, hours researching a television that they'll replace in 5 years. But they'll spend almost no time understanding the account that's supposed to help fund the last 30 years of their life. Now, doesn't that seem backwards? We plan for a 7-day cruise better than we plan for a 30-year retirement. Then it hit me. And maybe it's hitting you right now, not because you're irresponsible, because nobody ever taught you to prioritize it. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation today, because once you know better, you can start making better decisions. And coming up next, we're going to be talking about some of the biggest misunderstandings surrounding traditional 401ks. Taxes. Because the question isn't just how much have you saved. The question is how much of that money will actually be yours to spend. And trust me, that's a conversation some people have never had. Now, let's talk about the part that nobody explains, taxes. Now, before anybody jumps in my comments, I'm not here to tell you that a 401k is bad. I'm not. I'm here to tell you that you need to understand the rules of the games before you play them. Because that's how wealth is built, not by guessing, by understanding. So here's what's happening. So let's say you make $100,000 a year. So you decide to put that $10,000 in your traditional 401k. That's $10,000 generally goes into the account before federal income taxes are applied. So instead of paying taxes on $100,000, you're paying taxes on about $90,000. Sounds good, right? And honestly, for many people, it is. You get a tax deduction today, so your money has the opportunity to grow over time. Everybody's excited, but here's the question. What happens when you retire? Because eventually you're going to want to spend that money. So maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to spoil your grandbabies. Maybe you want to finally buy that beach house you've been dreaming about. And if you are, I will come visit. Maybe you simply want to pay your bills without worrying every month. So when you begin taking distributions from a traditional 401k, those withdrawals are generally taxed at ordinary income under current tax law. Notice what I said, current tax law, because nobody knows exactly what tax rates will be 20, 30, or 40 years from now. Nobody. Not me, not Congress, nobody. But I still think they're going to go up. That's just me. And that's why your retirement savings, that's why your retirement strategy deserves more than autopilot. It deserves thought. It deserves questions. It deserves a plan because retirement isn't just about accumulating money, it's about creating income. Those are two different conversations, and I want y'all to catch that. Accumulation is getting money, income is living on money. Big difference. So here's an example. Let's pretend you save $1 million. Yay! Everybody claps, everybody celebrates, you made it. But when you retire and now you have to decide, how do I turn this into income? How much can I withdraw? What taxes will I owe? And how long will this money last? So those are the questions that determine whether retirement feels peaceful or stressful. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't start asking questions until they already retired. That's late in the game. So I want you to start asking those questions now while you still have options, while you still have time, while you still have flexibility. Now, let me say something that might surprise you. The wealthiest families don't just ask, how much money can I make? They ask, how much money can I keep? Woo, did y'all catch that? Because there is a difference. Anybody can make money. Keeping it, protecting it, passing it on, that's where the strategy comes in. That's why I always tell people, don't just chase returns, understand risk, understand taxes, understand beneficiaries, understand your options, because every financial decision has consequences. Some consequences are good, some are expensive. Now, the goal is not perfection, the goal is being informed. Now, I know somebody watching me is saying, SaVita, this is making my head spin. Trust me, I got it. I get you. Because I felt the same way years ago. Nobody handed me a playbook. Nobody sat me down and said, hey, girl, this is how wealth actually works. I had to learn. I had to ask questions. I had to find mentors. I had to admit there were things that I didn't know. And let me tell you something. There's no shame in learning. The only shame is refusing to learn. I want y'all to write that down. There's no shame in learning. The only shame is refusing to learn, because information changes everything. It changed my life. It changed the conversations I have with my son. It changed how I looked at money. It changed how I prepare for retirement. It changed what questions I ask. And that's exactly why I am talking to you today. Not because I know everything, but because I know more than I used to. And every time I learn something that can actually help another family, I believe it's my responsibility to share it, because somebody shared it with me. That's how we build legacy. We don't hoard knowledge, we pass it down. Just like grandma used to pass down those recipes, we should be passing down financial wisdom. Can I get an amen on that? So now, before we wrap this up, I want to show you exactly what you should do if you think you have an old 401k. How to avoid some of the biggest mistakes that people make, and why this conversation is about so much more than retirement. Because this is really about taking control of your financial future. And that's where we're headed next. So we talked about how millions of Americans have old retirement accounts they may have forgotten about. We talked about why that happens. We've talked about taxes. Now the question becomes, okay, SaVita, what do I do now? I love practical conversations because information without action does not change your life. So let me give you 5 things that you can do starting today. Number 1, find out what you have. If you've had multiple employers, make a list. So right now, every company you work for, even if it was 20 years ago, even if your first job was out of college, even if your job you only stayed at for 18 months, make the list. You'd be surprised how many people forget an employer until they actually sit down and think about it. So then check your records and use the trusted resources such as your former employer, plan administrator, or the Department of Labor retirement savings lost and found to see whether you have retirement accounts connected to those jobs. Don't assume, verify, because assumptions do not build wealth. Facts do. Number 2, understand what you own. Don't just know you have a 401k. You have to know what's inside it. How is it invested? What are the fees? Who's managing it? Who's the beneficiary? How has it been performing? When was the last time you even looked at it? Some of y'all haven't even logged in since Obama was in office. I'm teasing, but I'm serious. Money deserves your attention. Number 3, do not make emotional decisions. So this is huge. I have seen people leave a job, get excited because they can finally access their retirement money, cash it out, buy a new car, pay for a vacation, or handle an emergency, only to discover later they owe taxes and, depending on their age and circumstances, potentially early withdrawal penalties. Now they're trying to rebuild what took years to save. So before you make a decision with retirement money, understand the consequences. Every option has pros and cons. Education comes first, decisions come second. Number 4, ask better questions. So instead of asking how much money do I have, ask, what is this money supposed to do for me? Is it supposed to create retirement income? Leave a legacy, protect your family, reduce taxes, supplement Social Security. Every dollar should have an assignment because when your money has purpose, your decisions become clearer. Number 5, build a team. Can I tell y'all something? Every professional athlete has a coach. Multi-billion-dollar businesses have accountants. Celebrities have attorneys. The wealthiest people in the world don't make every financial decision alone. They ask questions. They surround themselves with knowledgeable professionals because they're incapable. Not because they're incapable, because they're wise. There is strength in getting good guidance. Now, I want to speak directly to the women watching me, especially my divorced women, especially my single moms, especially the women rebuilding after life knocked them sideways. I see you because I've been there. I know what it feels like to start over. I know what it feels like to wonder, am I ever gonna catch up? I know what it feels like to be embarrassed because nobody taught you this stuff. Can I free you today? You're not behind because you're incapable. You're behind because financial education has not been equally accessible to everyone. But here's the beautiful thing. You are here now. You are learning now. You're asking questions, and that changes everything. So today can be the day your family's financial story begins to change. Not because you suddenly became wealthy overnight, because you got intentional. Intentional people make different decisions. Different decisions create different outcomes. It's how legacies are built. Not all at once, one decision at a time. Now, I want to say something to my entrepreneurs, my business owners, my veterans, my corporate professionals, my teachers, my healthcare workers, my first responders, everybody watching. This conversation is bigger than finding an old 401k. It's about refusing to stay financially asleep. It's about saying, I'm going to understand where my money is. I'm going to understand how it works. I'm going to stop making financial decisions on autopilot because nobody will ever care more about your financial future than you. And that's not meant to scare you. It's meant to empower you. Because when you understand the rules, you'll stop feeling intimidated by money. Money is a tool, not a source of fear. Can I leave you one final thought? Imagine spending 30 years working, missing birthdays, working overtime, covering holidays, driving through traffic, missing sleep, missing family dinners, sacrificing, saving, building, only to leave thousands of dollars behind because nobody explained what happens when you change jobs. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for your children. I don't want that for your parents. I don't want that for your friends. So knowledge is too available for us to keep making avoidable mistakes. That's why conversations like this matter. So today, before you watch another episode on Netflix, before you scroll social media for another hour, take 15 minutes. Write down every employer you've ever had. Find out where your retirement accounts are. Check your beneficiaries. Log into your accounts. Read the statements. Ask questions because your future self is depending on the decisions that you make today. So before we wrap up, I've got something special for you next Tuesday. We talk about where your forgotten money is hidden. Not money you have to earn, money that already belongs to you and you don't even know it. So I'm going to show you some of the most common places people forget about money, how it happens, and the first steps you can take to see if any of it has your name on it. So if you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now because trust me, you don't want to miss that conversation because around here, we just don't talk about money. We talk about keeping it, protecting it, and making it work smarter for your future. I'm SaVita, the living proof of finance. I love God, I love people, and I love to have fun. And remember, if it don't make sense, it don't make dollars. I will see you next Tuesday.